It really is a sad state of affairs when your own government turns against its people and is using criminal elements within the society in order to corral and control them. Hello and welcome back. So as you can see, I'm here in this actually Balinese soccer park because I had some dev work to do today and I did not manage to get it done before the sun went down. And this is one of the only places in public that is, not super crowded, doesn't have a lot of traffic, and is well lit at night. Today we're going to talk about Anarcho-Tyranny. For long-time listeners or subscribers of the show, you know that I've spoken about Anarcho-Tyranny before. This is a term coined by Samuel Francis, and it refers to a state in mature democracies especially, whereby there is selective enforcement of the law. And the direction of this selective enforcement is in favor of criminality and against law-abiding citizens. And you might ask, why would this be the case? Why would there be a situation where there's selective enforcement that favors criminals as opposed to the citizenry who are normal law-abiding citizens? And the answer to this has to do with the sort of political and sociological priorities of a given regime. And so the way that you can think about this is that if a government is set up such that having a large, sort of unruly, poorly behaved, slightly criminal, but not like overly underclass is incentivized in terms of them winning votes, in terms of their policy priorities, in terms of support for federal programs that rely on sort of an embedded growth obligation in order to keep going. If there are, demographic reasons for having these people in your country, and they're causing a lot of problems, then then what you end up with is a system of selective enforcement. And I didn't review the Sam Francis essay that I referenced last time. I made an audio essay about this several years ago ahead of this video, but I thought I just wanted to come on and talk about it because a lot of what's been going on in the United States, but especially in the UK recently, really highlights this phenomenon of what's called anarcho-tyranny, right? And the basic, way to think about this is that there's two sort of forces that are coming together. There's the anarchic part, right, which is sort of the disorderliness, the lawlessness, the lack of public order. You can think of, the disorder on U.S. subways, or the, motorcycle and ATV gangs that have been taking over the streets of cities like Austin and Chicago and Washington, D.C. That's sort of the anarchic part. And then there's the tyranny part. The tyranny part is the government taking the opportunity to use its full force against sort of normal law-abiding citizens. The way that this looks in the UK is you get selective enforcement of, let's say, hate speech laws, for example. Or you get, the issues with the grooming gangs where the police end up, weirdly, for some very strange, perverse reason, punishing victims, right, normal white British girls, as opposed to the perpetrators, the Muslim gangs that are perpetrating this behavior. And all this has to do with sort of a view towards the perpetrators as kind of clientele of the state or of the political party that is allowing this disorderliness and then punishing the orderly people to happen. So like I said before, they're relying on these people for votes, they're relying on these people to utilize their social services, and to an extent they're also relying on these people to kind of keep the normal population scared. And of course, there are other sort of more abstract ideological reasons why there might be a state of anarcho-tyranny. You can look at various aspects of liberalism, the way in which it sort of tends to be oikophobic and xenophilic, that is afraid of people like themselves or biased against people like themselves, and and favoring people that are different than themselves. And so these have various ideological justifications. But I think if you want to get away from the abstract philosophy and just talk about real mechanisms of power and get it down to an empirical state, then I think you have to talk about political economy. I think you have to talk about the incentive structures that are set up politically and institutionally for various kinds of things. And you also have to think about sort of the long-term goal of these institutions, right? If your goal is to corral and control and bring down the level of freedom of your native population, and you have a population of people that are freedom-loving people that are used to doing as they like, well, then one way to do that is to facilitate a state where there's a constant kind of on-edgeness, there's a constant kind of fear, there's a constant worry about the criminal element, the disorderly element in your society, but also a kind of harsh enforcement that is, again, very, very selective. And so this puts people into a perpetually petrified state where they're afraid to go out, they're afraid of unruly, disorderly vagrants in public, and they're also afraid of reacting to those people, of standing up for themselves, because they've noticed that when people do stand up for themselves, they end up getting persecuted and prosecuted by the government itself. And so what this does is actually it creates a feedback loop, where now the state has a justification for even fewer freedoms, even harsher laws, because they say, look, people aren't behaving, people there's all this mess that we have to clean up, while at the same time there is this inability for the people that are just trying to do what is right, trying to live their lives, trying to be peaceful, trying to maybe keep the peace themselves because they're noticing that the authorities are not enforcing it properly. There's an inability for those people to act. And so what you then get is sort of an implicit kind of deal between the sort of criminal element in your society, the vagrant demographics and so forth, and the political operation, the political machine that's kind of enabling this to happen. And so they sort of get to run roughshod over the locals. They as long as they're not upsetting the actual political order, as long as these people are not actually political actors that really threaten the regime, as long as they're sort of petty criminals bothering people on the train, making lots of noise, causing problems, in the case of the UK, I guess raping young girls, whatever it may be, then it's not an issue because they're not really a political threat, and in fact they're kind of a political asset. And so the point of this video is really just to talk a little bit about the term anarcho-tyranny, introduce it to the lexicon, or reintroduce it rather, because it's coming up very, very frequently lately in a lot of the incidents that are seen happening in the United States as well as in the UK, particularly incidents around disorderly conduct in public, harassment, people trying to defend themselves and then getting charged for assault or getting charged for murder, when really they are just defending themselves against unruly and often violent, psychopathic, crazy drug addicts and other people like that. And what's the key takeaway? Well, the key takeaway from all of this is that if you notice that there is this kind of selective enforcement happening, then the way to combat this is to try to counteract the political machine that's operating, that's sort of allowing this to work. And so you have to basically push for parties and politicians that do not view this criminal disorderly element in your society as an asset to their political and institutional machinations, and does not view them as sort of pets or clientele of the reigning political regime. And what you actually have to get is a real rule of law that is unselective enforcement against the criminal element, and also a recognition of sort of the spirit of the law, whereby law-abiding citizens who are merely going about their business or defending themselves are not prosecuted by the state. It really is a sad state of affairs when your own government turns against its people and is using criminal elements within the society in order to corral and control them. But we can take it back, and the first step to doing that is awareness and then action. Thanks for watching.